Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Numa. It's been a while, but we're glad you're here. We have some great guests coming up in the rest of the year and in the year to come. And today, we are circling back with my wonderful friend, Morgan, who is here to talk about the Well-BEing Cohort that we just finished recently. So, Morgan, before we go into things, some of our viewers might not be familiar with you, might want to get to know you a bit. Could you just give us a real brief introduction to who you are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Morgan Fletcher, and a year and a half ago, I started my company called Present Nomads. And within that company, I do free range pastoring, essentially whatever can be done remotely to help you get to pastor as a pastor is what I do in that area. I'm also a licensed social worker, so I do therapy within that. And then I do partnership, which is where Evergreen comes in.
Yeah.
And what's been really great within that partnership is getting to use the fact that I've been in parish ministry for come now 13 and a half years.
Yeah.
Prior to that, being Baptist, you often in student ministry were leading before you were properly licensed to or ordained to. So I've been doing ministry for 21 years.
Yeah.
And social work for 13 as well. And in our partnership, I get to bring both of those together.
Yes.
And essentially within our first key partnership was the Well-BEing Cohort.
Yeah.
And I got to bring a lens of psychoeducation to normalize kind of what are we going through when we're unwell? How do we identify when we're unwell?
Yeah.
As well as, is being well a luxury or is it a necessity for liberation and movement work and ministry? And so that's where we came in. I've been a part of the Evergreen community for, I think, almost 4.5 years because Calvary Baptist Church of Denver shifted.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's been great to lean into that community in a different capacity and a different way as a practitioner.
Yeah. I love all the multifacetedness of yourself, and how it all comes together in this cohort as well. Could you tell us just very briefly, what was the cohort?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cohort had essentially 2 key prongs. The first was one-on-one sessions with me. And those consisted of an intro goal-setting session where each clergy was able to identify, these are the things I'd like to work on with you. Then we had 4 1-hour sessions where I partnered with them to talk through that. What did that look like? How could we support and get creative around what tools could help their well-being? And 1 45-minute exit where sometimes we go into spaces and it's like, oh, this is all really great, but how do I actually make it possible? That last exit is the practical, tangible, moving forward session. And then we actually started out with 2 group sessions, 90 minutes each. And at the end of the second, we evolved realizing, no, we needed a third. So we added a third.
Yeah.
And then what was really beautiful is Evergreen supported this random idea I had of seed money for supporting whatever was coming out of these sessions so that each member was able to take some money that wasn't already in their budget and apply it to things that allow them to be well.
Yeah.
And within that, we were able to really kind of utilize multiple areas of whatever was needed to support them and help them get to a place of just checking in on what does it actually mean to be well versus all the external things telling us what we need and shifting into that internal wisdom.
Yeah. And this is what I loved about designing the cohort with you, because it had that philosophy. Because I don't know, as a pastor in certain places, when we're struggling, everyone's very quick to come in and saying, this is what you need to do.
Sure.
Right? This is what you need to do. And you feel like you're just trying to, just answer everyone's demands, right? But when in terms of taking care of ourselves, your approach was hey, let's go from the spot where you have agency to dream up and be creative, taking care of yourself that feels right for you. And that's what I really loved about it, because I feel a lot of pastors, we feel like we have to fit ourselves into a very particular mold as a pastor figure. Whether that's reality or not, there's that pressure. And so I really like this approach that you did about what looks like a health for you, like well-being for you, is going to be different than somebody else.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that was really special. So tell me a bit about like your learnings through the process of this pilot program.
I think the biggest learning is well-being is nice in theory and super hard in practice.
Yes.
And that was something I knew from my own ministerial experience.
Yeah.
But even going through a cohort, hearing our amazing cohort members go, yeah, but like I have this system in place and like I can disrupt it here on the individual to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But if it's going to impact like what I'm doing on the systemic level with my congregation, there's an imbalance there. And so realizing that being able to, whether it's through what you're doing with congregation, Sam, or maybe there's a different iteration of the well-being cohort that looks at the system, but that there is a need for both because it's kind of like family systems, right? One family member can start to heal and adjust and change, and it disrupts the rest of it. But when you're a pastor or a minister, it can feel like you can only go so far because we're collectively serving together.
Yes.
And so that was a meaningful highlight because it's not just, well, go and do the task, go and do the well-being items that you have identified, because that takes out a key context piece of what does that mean for the congregation and how do we also support them in that shift and that adjustment? And is it the time? Another key learning was reaffirmed, I would say, in that sometimes, especially with how the world is, it can feel like we just need to survive. And when you start to heal, that can disrupt that survival mechanism that you have created. And it's a great deal of risk. Even if you know the payoff in the end is going to be life-giving and meaningful and good, it takes a lot on that front end to know that the risk is ready for now. And so if people are in a place where it's not ready, then let us resource you so that you can be as well as possible, knowing that survival is still what is needed. And that comes from beautiful social work practices of not all of our clients can remove the systems they're a part of or the family harm and trauma they're a part of. So how do we support them in that space so that they can still be as well as possible? And that well-being, I think the final takeaway is just reaffirming that well-being is not that everything is good. Well-being is that rooted into self, grounded into self. So when it is a terrible day, you still know what is true within yourself. And that you can tap in and say, okay, I can't actually tend to my well-being, like what I need, but I know what's missing and how to make small adjustments to get there. Because I think, especially in our world of consumerism and box-style approaches of one size fits all, it can feel like, oh, to be well means I have to be super happy. And that's not it. To be well is to have that belovedness that has been there. We don't cultivate it. We don't grow it. It just is. And being able to allow it to come forward and speak to us and know that like, even in those anxious, difficult, depressive times, that we can still know our well-being and know that it is there and how to check in with it, how to support it, as well as to acknowledge like it was a really terrible day and I am well. Both of those can be true. But so often in our culture here in the States, it's to be well is to have everything great. And I think throughout Scripture, we see that that's not the stories that are told, and yet people were well because they were grounded in that, what we would call either, in some of my therapeutic modalities, that self-energy, or theologically, we would call it our belovedness. To be rooted in that and to know that intuitive wisdom allows us to have the good, the hard, the terrible, and still be grounded in our well-being.
Yeah. Wow. There is so much that you just unpacked. You know, one thing that I really loved about what you were saying, what I was feeling was that we kind of talk about like well-being as sort of a deliverable, like a instant deliverable, or like just an obvious, like very causal, like do this and be well, do this and you're well. But you know, a lot of what I'm hearing about you is like it's very complicated. It's actually, healing is not just dependent on the individual choices, right? It's about a community. You know, it's not even about one good action. It's about just a lot of long, sustained, faithful, continuous actions in sequence, right? And it's really like a long journey, or another like metaphor would be like just a lot of steps involved. One thing that I was really struck by when you're talking about that whole idea of that tension between, especially right now in the current climate, like just to move from survival to long-term healing, right? And of course, everyone wants to be like healed for the long term, but so much is involved, so much work. Like I was even thinking about, as you were talking, I was thinking about how everyone says, yeah, you should work out, like, you know, to get better. And, you know, I've been trying to, you know, go to the gym more. And I'm like, hey, this is a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. And it's really disrupting like my whole life, because I can't like, I'm trying to put in time for this, and all these other things are taking my time. And I was just thinking like, what an analogy for like just the challenges of a pastor who just feels so overwhelmed, and that challenge of like taking that time for themselves to be well. I wonder if we could go back, because I love this idea of like pivoting from survival to a longer term well-being. Like, what do you feel are some of the things involved with that pivot from away from survival?
Yeah. One of the first questions I ask clients and parishioners when they come to me trying to figure out like, this thing's not working. Why is this thing in my life not working? My question is, do you always have enough, like, do you have enough energy right now to see it through? And when I say see it through, I don't think it's a destination, but like to go through further discomfort before it gets better.
Right.
Do you have the energy to go through further discomfort? And if the answer is no, then that's where we resource. If the answer is, ooh, I want it to be yes, but I don't know, then that's where we can begin to go, okay, where does it feel like you can't? Because sometimes that's what needs to be adjusted first. Other times it's a realizing that, oh, it doesn't have to be a big change. It can be a small pivot upon a small pivot upon a small pivot.
Right.
Similar to how you talk about when you worked with the congregation I'm a part of if we get off course and we don't check, we're really off course. But if we pay attention and see their small pivots, it might be that the boat's moving or ship's moving this way, but it's still relatively on course. Right. I feel like that's the same, because so often when we feel like we have to shift from survival to healing, that it's all at the same time.
Yes.
And that is just overwhelming. And so being able to see the smaller pieces and go, what is one thing that you can tangibly do? And then from there, let's see how that feels.
Right.
And make those small pivots, because ultimately what that, in my experience, allows us to do is to go, oh, when that one pivot changed, everything else also changed. It didn't necessarily get better, but I saw it differently. And we can build from that space in a therapeutic and pastoral and communal support. But healing, when we think of all the ways that we need to quote unquote heal, it can feel really daunting. And so taking it smaller and getting to the places of, let's just look at one small thing. Can allow also the energy to be ignited or revitalized to go, oh, right, this is what it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel to transformation in congregations. A lot of how we sabotage transformation, like lasting transformation, is because we make the goal like so unattainable, so intimidating. How can we possibly move there? But if we just try these very small, attainable, right, incremental, right, micro steps that don't feel like this huge burden, sooner or later, you actually go a lot faster taking the micro steps rather than the one large leap.
Yeah.
And I wonder, if that's not just a learning for individuals, but also for communities and churches.
Yeah.
And I think the second thing to that is like, why don't we do this more often? And I think it's because we sort of judge the micro step. We're like, oh, it's so tiny. Like, what can it really do? We have nothing to show for it. But if I can go cold turkey from this, or if I can just jump tomorrow and be this, that's much more impressive. And we judge ourselves. I even wondered the language of being oh, I'm just surviving. Like, you feel kind of like you're judging yourself, but that's actually a huge thing.
Dude, to survive is some days the most true aspect of being well.
It's powerful.
It is.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to disrupt your survival because I don't live your life.
Right.
So if I come in and I'm like, well, you just have to shift from survival to thriving.
Yeah.
I may actually be causing more harm. It is then an outsider not honoring the contextuality of what is best for you in this moment, or what is needed for you in this moment.
And do you think that's like some of the internal fear that people have of going to like counseling or seeking resources like you're talking about? Because they're worried like what the resources or the counseling or the therapy will tell them will be this like thing that's out of their context.
I think in part, for sure.
Yeah.
I was talking to a colleague just this past week, and they were like, I think the media also doesn't help healing. Yeah. Because like you see psychologists, therapists, counselors, and it's like, if that's what therapy is, I'm not going. That's that's not okay. So I think there's some messaging. I was just meeting with the Well-BEing Cohort this morning, and one of the things we talked about as to why maybe some are less inclined to join, I think some of it is gendered. So I think there are, because our current cohort is all female clergy, female identifying clergy. They were like, was that intended? I was like, no, like this just happened. And it was beautiful, meaningful. But I do think that for those who identify as female, there's permission to do that, and invitation around, especially because wellness like culture is very geared to women, that there's like, oh, okay, here's another thing I can do to take care of myself. Yeah. And self-care is very gendered as well.
Yeah.
That I think there's that narrative. Yeah. I also grew up and hear it a lot in my practice. Oh, I'm not that bad, but if I get that bad, I'll come to therapy.
Oh, interesting.
And I'll tell folks, I'm like, please don't do that with your primary care. Yeah. Like, go once a year, see how things are. Yeah. And I tell folks, it's way easier to find supports for your mental health and your spiritual well-being when you're not in crisis than when you are. Yeah. Because that is just so much energy to go into. So I think the other piece is the energy. Yeah. Like when you're already in a place of either burnout, exhaustion, overwhelm, to then go, oh, I now have to go and talk through, even though I know it's going to be good for me. That is another level of energy, which is what you were talking about. Like even going to the gym, it's great, but I am like that disrupts my whole schedule. Yeah. And then I'm tired because I worked out. Yeah. And now I don't have the same energy. And so even those moments of just knowing also how we orient to space can be a key one.
Well, I mean, you're just triggering all these thoughts in my head about, I definitely been in some circles with other male pastors, and there's almost this virtue about, just grin and bear it, or like, look at how much I'm holding,
dig deep, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, dig deep, like, and we use these words as virtues, and we're kind of saying like, oh yeah, like I'm getting totally beat up, but I showed up today, and, and when we keep praising those things, it really kind of lends us to space. Like we don't ask those questions like, oh, how can I be better, right? How could I actually not have to go through this? And I think there is something there to be sure, and we don't want to like generalize it as simply
no, it
as
goes
genders,
across the board.
But across the board for sure. But I think you are onto something. It is interesting, like just speaking from my vantage point with other male pastors. It's something to really unpack for sure. I wonder if there's also a part of this is the way we've sort of designed churches, they look much more like small businesses, and we've got to have a deliverable. We've got to meet certain budget criteria, right? Sure. We're always setting the budget, and that kind of becomes our focus.
Yeah.
And so like, what can we do to sacrifice ourselves so that we meet these deliverables, you know? And I feel like it's really backwards. It's more like these budgets and resources are supposed to fund our wellness. Like that's our goal, right?
Yeah.
That we find shalom,
Yeah.
right, in God.
Yeah.
But it gets so flipped around.
Sure.
I wonder, you know, going forward, if there were things about the cohort, like what would we like to, you know, adjust or take forward, you know, going into the future? I think you said some very interesting things. Like, I'm definitely thinking about the gender piece. That's actually very interesting. And then I think we talked a lot about the structures of like that they're working in. Like, I think we had some conversations about this, about you were mentioning earlier in our conversation about, yeah, they're trying to get well, but they hit a ceiling, if you will, because their environment is still very toxic. So even though they've made some moves from within. So yeah, maybe going forward, like what would be the future maybe of well-being cohorts and Evergreen?
Yeah. I think a key piece on a broad scale is to normalize using the amazing resources at Evergreen, even when it doesn't feel like you quote unquote need it.
Right.
Because then those muscles are used for when they are. Like they're more limber and they're more, naturally go path of least resistance. Right. So when we're path of least resistance in crisis, it may be going to things that don't serve us very well in our well-being. But if we use those muscles that allow us to be well collectively and individually, path of least resistance can actually be that same path. Right. And so some of it is, if you're having conversations with your congregation or your church leadership and you're going, like we're good, great, still use those resources. Right. Do those check-ins, allow it so that it's normalized beforehand and we know who to call on Evergreen or what other, like we're at the annual gathering, what other churches have similar stories that we're like, I want to make sure that we keep conversation going so that we don't have those isolations as much. So that would be one.
Resources are not for crisis only.
Right. And I think that's often how church functions because sometimes that's how
100%.
People come to us as churches.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And we want that still.
Yeah.
Come. If you got issues, like come.
Yeah.
Right? Don't grin and bear it.
But there's more to your life than just that.
It is. And I think that's where, and I really took it from premarital sessions. I tell any couple I do a premarital session with, find a couples therapist now. Touch base with them once a year. So that if you ever need it, you can have that tune-up. You can have that check-in. You can have that. And I think the same is true across the board. Whether that's a spiritual director, a therapist, or even the amazing leadership and skills that are with Evergreen that may not be mental health or spiritual well-being, like health resources, because those still impact our mental health and our spiritual resources. So that would be one. The other is, and I asked the cohort members today what they really would want, and some of it is they want to continue. They've created this connection. They want to see what, like, is there a 2.0 for those who have taken it?
Interesting.
Some have even said, like, could we be mentors for those who come next so that they have somebody that they can be paired with and create this broader web of community? And another had said what would be really meaningful is to be able to have in person, not at the end, but halfway. Who knows what comes of that? But I love that even the participants were trying to figure out how do we normalize this and broaden it for others? Yeah. For me, a key one has always been, like, we can look at our system or our symptoms of things, whether it's as individuals or as organisms like congregations. But if we don't get to the why, then we're going to potentially see those symptoms pop up again, but in a different iteration. Right. And so the more we can normalize having healing spaces for the church as an entity. Like if we were to take family systems and apply that, because that's essentially what church is. It's just a really big family.
Yeah.
And we all have our different roles that we play.
Right.
And we often hear it in leadership when one of the key leaders has to shift, that changes things. And that's okay. We want that person to be able to tag in, tag out when energy allows. But if we don't process, if we don't allow healing, we can sometimes feel it. And it almost becomes this like ghost of a story in the background. We'll often talk about it with senior pastors, right? Oh, when so-and-so was here, that's when this took place, right? But I think that happens through experience when there's trauma in a church. That could be systemically, situationally, or even a key death in the community. When a community has gone through stuff, and the church is a part of a larger maybe natural disaster or struggle. We have a lot of that right now just with the state of how our country is. And so to be able to also support congregations through essentially group healing sessions. And those are uncomfortable because it means being vulnerable and sharing, but there's some really meaningful ways where you can do it one-on-one with the practitioner and then come together as a collective. And for me, that's a key hope because that also then supports the individuals, because healing is not just something we provide others, but that we practice and engage in. And some congregations naturally have that in their ethos. And so let's learn from those congregations. How have they been able to cultivate that? We often call them like healthy congregations, but to me, there's usually a lot of healing that has allowed that health to take place.
Right. Yeah, that's
right?
right. Yeah.
And so what does that look like and how do we support that?
Yeah.
And then if a pastor is ready or leadership on staff is ready to make some adjustments, to know that they can utilize like evergreen staff or myself or others. Like if you need somebody local, let's find, like, I'm happy to do that research and find a good partner for you who can come in and help that congregation make some of those changes so that it's not just the pastor advocating for their well-being. And thus it's like, it can fuel that narrative that, you know, taking care of self is selfish, but going, oh, here's actually how, when one of us gets to be well, the rest of us get to be well.
Yeah.
And because we talk about it, right? Like my liberation is tied up in your liberation. My well-being is tied up in your well-being. Right. But when we start to make shifts to make it well, it can feel like a competition versus a collective invitation. Right. And that's where I see some of that systemic stuff coming into play.
Yeah. Yeah, which is very complicated.
Yeah.
It definitely needs like some facilitation.
Yeah.
You know, I feel, you know, as we close up our conversation, there's so much here. This is really, my mind is racing right now. But I think it's very interesting that we're sort of evolving. Like I think we started with a cohort, focusing on these individuals gathering, right? And then what we discovered is that they started forming a community. And it's interesting that you were listening to them and they're like, now I want to be involved in forming communities of healing too. And we were talking about this idea of like moving beyond the individual to the systems of the churches. So I find it interesting how healing seems to have this like natural, I don't know, outward growth. Like it just keeps moving out to people. You can start in a very particular place. And I wonder if like that's kind of the future of the cohorts. I'm thinking about that for Evergreen. Like a lot of what we do, why Evergreen I think is so powerful, why so many people are part of it, is because they see that movement of growth outwards from the individual. And I see it happening in the cohorts that we're doing. So very excited to the future. We got to follow up with the stuff we're talking about. I've already got some ideas. But I'm so grateful for this first cohort. I think the future work we do together is going to really be powerful and so meaningful for the times that we're in right now. I think what we're touching on is probably some of the most important things we need to attend to right now. So grateful for you.
Oh my goodness. I just want to extend deep gratitude for Evergreen who allowed this, and to every congregation of the cohorts who invested in each of those cohort members.
That's right.
Because sometimes I think we invest in things and then we're like, that's a great success. in the sense like people attended, people did it.
Yep.
But there is risk in investing in something like anything new, but especially in something that doesn't have a clear product. Like there is not a paper that we can even write and say, this is exactly the deliverables. And so to invest in something that is nebulous but meaningful is something that Evergreen does beautifully. And that each of those congregations and each of those cohort members who took a risk in this first iteration, that is something that also is what has allowed, birthed, grown, midwifed, where we're at to what comes next. And so deep gratitude to you, to all the participants and their communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are very blessed. Thank you very much for joining us in this episode. And, just God's grace to you as you continue your journey of healing on your own and in your communities. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.